Kenichi, an unremarkable middle-aged man, finds himself transported to another world after a series of exhausting workdays land him in the hospital. Realizing that his fast-paced life is taking a toll on his health, he decides to leave it all behind, retreating to a simpler life in the wilderness. There, he spends his days cultivating crops, befriending crows, and enjoying isekai anime, writing in his free time. One day, as he attempts to buy ingredients online, Kenichi is suddenly whisked away to an unfamiliar world. Upon discovering a nearby body, he begins to suspect he's in a fantasy realm. Remembering the isekai anime he's watched, Kenichi tries summoning a status screen. To his surprise, it works, but it feels different from what he's seen before. The screen doesn't show the usual health or magic stats. Instead, it has two options, one labeled Shangri-La. Curious, he clicks it and is astonished to find the same online shopping site he used back in his world. The second option is an item box feature. Kenichi tests the item box by storing some weeds nearby and is amazed at how easily he can retrieve them. Hungry, he decides to use Shangri-La to order food, but the screen requests money, which he doesn't have. In a stroke of inspiration, he attempts to trade items from his item box for cash. Unfortunately, the weeds hold no value, leaving him frustrated. His gaze then falls on a sword stuck in the nearby corpse, and after some hesitation, he decides to trade it. The sword fetches nearly 100,000 yen, giving him enough funds to buy food. He takes a moment to bury the body and thanks it for helping him survive in this strange world. Using the money, Kenichi orders a bike, durable boots, and a compass to help navigate. With his new gear, he sets out to find a settlement. While resting, Kenichi realizes he can use Shangri-La to buy items and sell them for a profit. This gives him an idea to build his fortune. However, his peaceful meal is interrupted when terrifying monsters appear from the forest. In a panic, Kenichi quickly searches Shangri-La for a weapon. The only choice is a bow, but he has no idea how to use it. In desperation, he orders fireworks to buy time, only for them to provide a brief distraction. Next, he orders a slingshot, which works perfectly to fend off the beasts, and he continues to fight until the wolves retreat. With his heart racing, Kenichi grabs his belongings and flees, using a headlamp he purchased to navigate through the night. By morning, he sees a city on the horizon. On his way, he meets Fuyo, a merchant, who offers him a ride to the city. Along the journey, Kenichi explains his business plan, but Fuyo is confused by his lack of equipment. He soon guesses that Kenichi must be one of the special people with an item box. Another passenger, eager to demonstrate, pulls out an instrument from her item box and sings a song about their journey, hinting that Kenichi's adventure is just beginning. Once in the city, Kenichi thanks Fuyo with some pepper, which surprises him. Fuyo warns Kenichi about Bakiopa, a powerful spice syndicate that dominates the market, cautioning him against dealing in spices. However, Fuyo is impressed and insists on paying for the pepper, making it Kenichi's first sale. Later, Kenichi calculates the worth of the pepper and is stunned by the profits. That evening, he checks into a restaurant inn, where the receptionist greets him warmly. He decides to stay the night and pays a silver for a room. When asked to sign his name, Kenichi realizes he can't read or write in this world's language. Embarrassed, he explains it's not due to a lack of education but unfamiliarity with the local script. The receptionist is intrigued by his strange attire and Kenichi jokes about it being part of his business strategy. However, she warns him that the Merchants Guild won't register anyone who can't read, write, or do basic math. To prove his competence, Kenichi effortlessly solves a math test, impressing the receptionist. Kenichi struggles with reading and writing, so Azalea offers to teach him how to write his name. In exchange, Kenichi promises to reward her with candy from another country, which piques her interest. When Azalea tastes the candy, she's overwhelmed by its exquisite flavor and worries the upper class may seize it. Kenichi finds her reaction amusing but nudges her to begin the lesson. As they go over the basics, Kenichi notices the language shares similarities with one from his old world. Thanks to Azalea's guidance, Kenichi quickly learns. Azalea, impressed, jokingly suggests that he could be a successful merchant and even might want her as his mistress one day. Kenichi, flustered and trying to steer clear of such thoughts, sketches a portrait of her, unintentionally making things awkward. Azalea is awestruck by the drawing, feeling even more special and indebted to him. The next day, Kenichi registers at the Merchants Guild, paying a fee of 1 silver, but after expenses, he only has 116,000 yen left. Luckily, the guild allows him to pay in installments, and he receives his official guild ID. Kenichi then explores the market, noting prices and learning the value of various goods. A plain plate costs 1 silver, about 5,000 yen, while slightly brown paper costs 1 copper, or about 1,000 yen. Kenichi buys fruit from a quirky vendor, unsure of what it is, but Azalea recognizes it and says she loves it. Back in his room, Kenichi plans his next move but ends up falling asleep from exhaustion. The following day, he uses his purchases, including a hammer, to build a stand for his business. Azalea is impressed by the clothespins Kenichi makes, noting they're far superior to the flimsy ones she's used to. Later, Kenichi's stand attracts his first customer, an older woman named Anima, who buys 5 clothespins. As the day progresses, the clothespins sell quickly, much to Anima's delight, and she encourages Kenichi to stay in the area. Kenichi is excited by the success, but he knows competition is inevitable. A young man of high status approaches and inspects Kenichi's knives. After demonstrating their sharpness, the man expresses interest in buying one but asks for a larger blade. Kenichi searches his inventory and finds a beautiful sword that catches the man's eye. However, it costs 1 gold coin, and the man hesitates. Kenichi remains confident that his instincts will pay off. At that moment, a cat person begins sniffing around Kenichi's stand, prompting some disapproving remarks from other onlookers. This is Kenichi's first encounter with beast folk, and he's both surprised and intrigued. The cat person climbs onto the stand and points at the roof, wanting to buy it. Kenichi initially declines, but then remembers he can order more from Shangri-La. The cat person decides to buy 3, and Kenichi offers a small discount. However, the cats don't understand basic math and have no copper coins. Kenichi steps in, calculating the total and showcasing his numerical skills. Initially skeptical, the cats are convinced when the blonde man from earlier vouches for Kenichi's accuracy. With the deal done, the blonde man also buys the sword. By the end of the day, Kenichi uses his earnings to pay for 5 nights at the inn, feeling more confident in his growing business. In a luxurious manner, a noblewoman admires a collection of clothespins her maid has purchased. Inspired, she decides to sell them through her family business and immediately seeks out her father to seize the opportunity. Meanwhile, Kenichi, in his humble home, prepares for a bath using a small tub he had recently bought. While browsing through Shangri-La, Kenichi stumbles upon drum baths and imagines heating one with fire to enjoy a relaxing soak. Amidst his shopping spree, a thought strikes him: how does the online store actually function? The light from the screen doesn't illuminate his surroundings, and he's puzzled about how packages are delivered. A nagging suspicion begins to form in his mind: could there be a supernatural cost, perhaps even his soul, to all of this? Deciding not to dwell on it, Kenichi dismisses his concerns. Elsewhere, a young girl, looking desperate, tries to catch a pigeon for her next meal. However, her quiet desperation is interrupted when a voice calls out, startling her. Panicking, she flees, silently hoping she won't be caught. The following day, Kenichi starts organizing his shop and decides to refresh his inventory. He adds some jewelry to his display, not valuable gems, but polished glass pieces that are visually appealing and could bring in some profit. While he arranges his items, Margaret, the maid from the day before, returns, asking to buy more clothespins. Kenichi is surprised when she requests 100 of them but proceeds with the sale after seeing that she has the money ready. As he packs the items, Margaret spots the jewelry and asks if they're real diamonds. Kenichi explains that they're just polished glass, but they're attractive enough to sell. Margaret admires their craftsmanship and asks him to set one aside for her, promising to return to purchase it later. The day continues smoothly, but just as Kenichi is about to close shop, the beast folk from the day before walk in. Their serious expressions put Kenichi on edge, and he wonders if they're here to cause trouble. Before he can ask, the cat girl Miley steps forward and sniffs the air, confidently announcing that she smells spices on him. The beast folk cheer and beg Kenichi to sell them some. Kenichi hesitates, recalling warnings about the Spice Syndicate. He's unsure how they operate or what consequences might follow, so he refuses, not wanting to put his business in danger. The locals intervene, telling the beast folk that it's unfair to pressure Kenichi. Eventually, the beast folk accept his refusal, but Kenichi suggests a compromise. While he can't sell them spices, he invites them to share a meal with him in the woods outside town, where they can avoid drawing attention. The beast folk happily agree, and later that evening, they gather outside town to cook and share a meal under the stars. As Kenichi prepares, Inama offers to help, and he gives her some vegetables to chop. She's amazed at how vibrant and juicy they are. Kenichi explains that they're imported from another country and assures her the flavor matches their appearance. Meanwhile, Miley and the other beast folk catch a good number of fish by the river. Once all the ingredients are ready, Kenichi seasons the fish with his selected spices and cooks the meal. The beast folk are astonished by the flavor, they've never tasted anything like it before and are grateful. However, the delicious food leaves them craving alcohol. Inama tries to talk them out of it, pointing out that alcohol is expensive, but Kenichi doesn't mind indulging them. He pulls out a cheap bottle of booze, serves everyone a glass, and makes them promise not to tell anyone about the meal. Inama warns him he might be too generous, but Kenichi feels it's harmless, as the beast folk seem good-hearted. The night becomes lively with drinking, laughter, and even some bathing in the nearby river. Eventually, everyone falls asleep under the stars. Miley, fond of Kenichi, sneaks into his bedroll, hoping to find more special spices. The next morning, Kenichi returns to the inn, where Azalea is visibly upset. She scolds him for being out all night, clearly suspicious of his activities. Kenichi tries to explain that he was simply spending time with some beast folk outside town. Azalea's trust begins to waver when she notices strands of cat fur clinging to Kenichi's jacket. Suspicious, she confronts him, accusing him of doing more than simply spending time with another girl, specifically, a cat-eared one. Her anger flares as she scolds him for choosing someone else over her. Later that same day, Kenichi is back at his stall, preparing for another round of sales, when Margaret shows up again, this time with someone new, a striking young woman named Primula. At first, Kenichi is briefly taken aback by Primula's breathtaking appearance. But spotting Margaret right behind her quickly jogs his memory. She must be back to purchase the necklace she asked about the day before. Kenichi retrieves the necklace, accepts payment, and watches as Margaret hands it over to Primula, who examines it carefully. She's impressed by the necklace's quality and nearly mistakes it for being made from actual diamonds. Intrigued, she asks if Kenichi has more like it. In response, Kenichi pulls out a few more pieces from his inventory and lays them out for her inspection. Primula is not only captivated by the craftsmanship but also surprised to learn that Kenichi possesses an item box, something rare and valuable. She introduces herself as the daughter of the mallet trading company's owner and expresses interest in introducing Kenichi to her father, thinking he might want to partner with him. Although Kenichi is curious about meeting someone so influential, he's also wary of getting tangled in high-stakes dealings. Anima, however, eases his concerns by assuring him that Primula's father is a man of integrity, well respected in the community. With his worries lessened, Kenichi agrees and joins Primula in her carriage. As they ride together, Primula shows Kenichi some prototypes her craftsman made of the clothespins he sells. While replicating the wooden part was simple, the metal spring proved to be beyond their skill. Kenichi understands their struggle, admitting that even he doesn't fully grasp how the tiny springs are manufactured, only that the process is incredibly delicate and precise. They eventually arrive at Primula's residence, and Kenichi is stunned by the sheer size of the estate. Primula humbly downplays it, explaining that while it may look grand, it's modest compared to the noble family's manors. Once inside, they're greeted by her father, Mallow, a calm and charismatic man. After a brief introduction, Mallow invites Kenichi to sit down and talk business. Once everyone's settled, Kenichi shows off his collection of accessories. Mallow is equally impressed by the quality and is intrigued to hear from Primula that Kenichi owns an item box. Mallow shares that he also possesses one and credits it as one of the reasons he was able to build his company from the ground up. He advises Kenichi to make the most of his item box, noting that it's a powerful asset. Though he notices Kenichi currently only uses it for storing merchandise, he sees immense potential. Then Mallow cuts to the chase. He proposes that Kenichi become the official supplier for the Mallow Trading Company. Kenichi had expected something along these lines and assumes Mallow wants to buy his items at a low cost and resell them for a higher profit. But instead of dodging the question, Kenichi asks outright why Mallow doesn't just do that. Mallow responds honestly, saying he could, but it would be unethical and damage any potential long-term partnership. Moreover, by working directly with Kenichi, he gains a strategic edge over competitors who may try to form similar alliances in the future. Pleased with Mallow's transparent approach, Kenichi listens as he's offered 50% of the retail price for his goods. Though he knows he could negotiate for more, he considers the terms fair, especially since he's already doing well with his online sales. Kenichi agrees, and they seal the agreement with a handshake. After signing the official contract, he delivers the first batch and walks away with earnings exceeding 1 million yen. As future plans are discussed, Primula's eyes catch the sparkle of some elegant gems Kenichi has in stock. She instantly falls in love with them and asks her father if she can buy them. Mallow sees no reason to decline. Primula offers Kenichi 10 gold coins, equivalent to about 2 million yen, and the transaction boosts Kenichi's wealth into the 8-figure range for the first time since arriving in this world. Flush with cash, Kenichi is motivated to take a major step toward the life he's been dreaming of. He purchases a house through his online store and sets out the next day to find the ideal location for it. Leaving the city gates behind, he ventures into the forest. But before leaving, he informs Azalea of his plans. She's puzzled, wondering why he would choose to live in the dangerous woods when the city offers safety and stability. Kenichi assures her that he won't venture too far beyond the city limits, though she finds his behavior increasingly unusual. After a bit of scouting, he selects a promising site and begins clearing the area by purchasing a weed trimmer from his personal shop. Unfortunately, he's immediately hit with a familiar problem: fuel costs. While many goods in his store come at a surprisingly reasonable price, fuel is just as costly here as it was in his former world. With no choice, Kenichi forks over the money and continues clearing until he opens a path in and out of the forest. Next up are the trees. To deal with them, he acquires a chainsaw and starts chopping them down one at a time. After hours of grueling labor, he manages to cut down a decent number. However, when he attempts to stash the logs into his item box, he runs into an issue. The logs are too lengthy to fit. Irritated but resolute, Kenichi revs up the chainsaw again and cuts them down into smaller 10-meter segments that slide easily into the box. With most of the trees dealt with, only the stumps remain. As dusk begins to fall, Kenichi decides to wrap up for the day and tackle the rest tomorrow. The next morning, he returns, ready to finish off the stumps. He tries digging them out manually but quickly realizes the task is far too strenuous for one person. Rather than risk injury, Kenichi decides to buy a backhoe from his shop. When the enormous machine arrives, he's both thrilled and slightly horrified at having spent 1.2 million yen just to avoid hard labor. Still, as he considers the time and effort saved, the purchase starts to feel justified. Kenichi fires up the backhoe, only to be hit with another hurdle. It runs on diesel, and his shop doesn't carry it. Panic sets in. Was this all for nothing? Then it hits him, diesel can be improvised by blending kerosene with the right additives. Still, he knows if he gets the ratio wrong, he could destroy the engine. To be safe, he experiments with a diesel generator first. After mixing a small batch and filling the generator, he starts it up, and it works perfectly. Reassured, Kenichi plans to bring the backhoe back out tomorrow and finish the job. That night, another problem crops up. The forest is swarming with bugs, making it unbearable. Determined to fix this, Kenichi heads to a local magic shop the following day in search of insect-repelling magic stones. The store's wizardly owner greets him warmly and inquires about his origins. Kenichi explains he's a newcomer running a store in town and needs something to ward off bugs. The wizard offers the stones at 3 silver coins each, too steep for Kenichi's liking. He proposes a trade, 2 oranges in exchange for a discount. The wizard, intrigued by the exotic fruit, agrees to the bargain. Later, Kenichi chats with Inama, who tells him the wizard is famous for his magical expertise and makes a trustworthy ally. She then contrasts him with one of the area's most feared names, Shagar, the leader of a brutal bandit gang. His wanted posters cover the town, and a huge bounty sits on his head. That very night, Shagar strikes, ambushing a convoy transporting slaves, leaving the town on edge about his next move. The next day, Kenichi returns to the woods, excited to try out his backhoe. Any doubts fade away as he marvels at how much easier, and surprisingly enjoyable, the machine makes the job. With the stumps gone, he feels unstoppable in his quest to build a quiet life in the forest. Still, his enthusiasm is short-lived when he checks his account balance. The backhoe left a serious dent in his finances, prompting him to halt further projects for now and focus on earning more money. The next morning, Kenichi brings sugar to sell to Mallow, hoping to turn a profit. But Mallow explains that sugar and salt are classified as state-controlled resources and can't be legally sold by private vendors like Kenichi. Disappointed, Kenichi is about to give up until Mallow shares some welcome news: his jewelry has become a huge hit. Curious about what else Kenichi might be hiding, Mallow is impressed when shown the latest batch of creations. After selling them, Kenichi adds another 3 million yen in gold and silver to his growing fortune. With this financial boost, he finally has enough to afford a proper log cabin. The cost seemed too good to be true, and Kenichi quickly found out why when the delivery arrived unassembled. The cabin came in parts, and he realized he'd have to build the entire thing himself. It wasn't ideal, but it did explain the bargain price. With no other options, Kenichi rolled up his sleeves and got started. Fortunately, the instructions were clear, mostly involving joining wooden planks. As luck would have it, some beast folk happened to be hunting nearby. Remembering the kindness Kenichi had shown them before, they offered to help out. Grateful for the assistance, Kenichi kept managing his stall while construction slowly progressed. To support his unexpected crew, he purchased a grill to feed everyone and set up a small tent so he could camp near the site. After nearly a month of effort, the cabin was finally finished. Kenichi was deeply thankful to the beast folk and celebrated with them once the work was done. He began making his new place feel like home by buying essentials such as a bed and blankets for comfort. He also started planning future upgrades, like installing electricity, adding a fresh coat of paint, and reinforcing the roof. Over the following month, he made significant headway. Kenichi planted a garden with a strong fence and built a bathroom system that turned waste into compost. The toilet alone cost more than 200,000 yen, while the kitchen sink set him back another 30,000 yen. For power, he installed 20 solar panels linked to a battery array, costing nearly 400,000 yen in total. But his favorite addition was a drum-style bath he picked up for 25,000 yen. Even though it required hauling water from the river in gasoline containers, the luxury of a real bath made every drop of effort worthwhile. As he relaxed, Kenichi reflected on everything he had achieved. This was the definition of slow living, peaceful and self-sufficient, like a king in his own little domain. With a content smile, he declared his new life had officially begun. Later, he visited Azalea to tell her he would no longer be staying at the inn. She thanked him instead, grateful for his presence. The next morning, Kenichi headed out with a camera in hand, eager to capture the beauty of the wild. Life seemed perfect, but that peace was short-lived. During one of his walks, Kenichi unknowingly triggered a trap and was suddenly under fire from a barrage of arrows. He realized he was being attacked by beast folk who had noticed his presence in the woods. As they debated killing him, Kenichi felt the danger of this world hit home. Determined to survive, he went on the counterattack. Using a slingshot, he let loose several well-aimed shots, action movie style. Fireworks served as his next trick, startling the attackers. Then, he rolled out his backhoe, sending the enemy fleeing in panic. In the aftermath, he discovered a wounded cat struck by one of their arrows. The cat was clearly distressed and wouldn't let Kenichi near. Knowing it could lash out, Kenichi came up with a plan. He bought floor cushions and a protective neck guard. Once prepared, he carefully removed the arrow, disinfected the wound, administered antibiotics, and gave it painkillers. Worried it wouldn't survive on its own, he tried storing it in his item box, but it didn't work. Left with no choice, Kenichi brought the cat back to his home. There, he got it a pet blanket and set up a cozy recovery area. Still, the animal barely moved, leaving him unsure if it would make it. Hoping for help, he asked the old mage, who merely suggested skinning it for profit. Anama didn't have any answers either, but Miley offered a different take. She told him that bobcats were believed to be divine messengers and asked if she could see it. Returning home, Kenichi was relieved to find the cat had started eating. Miley confirmed the attackers were dogmen and pointed out that the arrow proved it. To stop the cat from aggravating its wound, Kenichi got it a collar. Miley, touched by his compassion, thanked him in the cat's place. To show her appreciation, she caught a few birds, and Kenichi grilled them over his portable setup. After seasoning the meat, Miley took a bite and was blown away by how good it was. She then asked to stay the night to help care for the bobcat, unfazed by the fact that Kenichi only had one bed. In the following days, the bobcat began recovering well, and Kenichi shifted his focus to farming. He bought seeds and fertilizer from Shangri-La but realized fetching water from the river daily would be exhausting. So, he started making plans to dig a well. That night, he had a strange dream, and woke to find the bobcat nudging him. The animal had recovered fully and appeared eager to return to the wild. As Kenichi opened the door, it bolted off into the forest, prompting him to quietly wish it a good life. With that chapter closed, he decided to temporarily pause his market stall and concentrate all his effort on digging a proper well. To get started, he invested in an earth drill and an electric pump. After a week of labor and 50,000 yen spent, Kenichi finally succeeded. Running water was now a reality. As he was basking in this small victory, Primula unexpectedly arrived, wondering why he hadn't been at the market. She explained that Miley had told her where he might be and stood amazed at everything he'd built. Her curiosity was piqued by the large metallic device behind his home. Thinking fast, Kenichi dubbed it his obedient helper and claimed it was a magical familiar. Primula bought into the explanation, now fully convinced that Kenichi was a magic user. Realizing the misunderstanding could work in his favor, Kenichi asked her to keep it a secret. He also pointed out that the city gates would close soon, casually implying she might need to stay the night. Primula, turning the tables with a playful smirk, teased that it sounded like he was inviting her over. Kenichi warned her that there was only one bed, but she didn't seem bothered at all. When she discovered he had a working bath, her enthusiasm only grew. That evening, Primula stepped nervously into the bath, but the surrounding darkness unnerved her. She quickly called out for Kenichi, asking him to stay nearby for comfort. He made sure she felt safe, though when he tried to leave, she clung to his presence. He suggested she try bathing during the day if darkness frightened her, but Primula insisted this was a rare opportunity. Kenichi reminded her they barely knew each other, implying he could be dangerous, but she dismissed the warning, saying Miley had told her everything about his kindness toward the bobcat. Later that night, Kenichi bought her a soft bathrobe, which led to an unexpected business idea when Primula suggested they sell them. Though it wasn't something he'd planned, Kenichi saw the potential and agreed to a limited batch. She was delighted. He also gifted her a nightgown costing 8,000 yen, which left her stunned by its luxurious feel. She joked that if he kept this up, he could become the top merchant in the kingdom. Kenichi brushed off the idea, saying that attracting nobles would only bring trouble. His only goal was to live peacefully with good food and no stress. Primula, understanding his viewpoint, reassured him that the Mallow Company would keep his identity as their supplier a secret. Later, Kenichi surprised her with a quick but well-drawn portrait, earning a smile before they turned in for the night. At some point, Primula whispered to see if he was awake. He feigned sleep, already suspecting what she wanted. Elsewhere, the mysterious girl from earlier was being mistreated by bandits. Their leader, Shagar, seemed satisfied with their latest haul. His men mentioned receiving a new job. The next morning, Kenichi escorted Primula back home, fully expecting questions from her father about where she had stayed. But to his surprise, Mallow simply thanked him for taking care of her and made a light-hearted comment about where she got her headstrong nature. Kenichi then showed Mallow the bathrobes, explaining their quality. As a joke, he also displayed a sample of racy lingerie, claiming it could make any man feel like a movie star. Mallow was so shocked that Kenichi quickly reassured him it was just a gag. A maid soon entered with a stack of papers. Mallow explained the kingdom had adopted a new accounting method, forcing a full rewrite of their records. The system, called double-entry bookkeeping, originated in a neighboring empire. Kenichi was floored. This was something from his previous life. Mallow added that the empire's rapid progress was thanks to innovations introduced by a mysterious figure. He then invited Kenichi to evaluate a prototype he had recently acquired. Kenichi was stunned to see a pitcher pump, another invention from his world. Mallow was impressed Kenichi recognized it instantly, but Kenichi was more concerned about the implications. 2 items from his former world meant someone else might have been reborn here. Driven by a mix of unease and pride, Kenichi attempted to present a unique vehicle design. However, the sketch triggered laughter instead of admiration, as the group thought it was a joke. Primula, meanwhile, started visiting Kenichi more often, frequently staying the night. One evening, Primula casually informs Kenichi that she'll be heading out for a business trip that will last a full month. During their chat, she unexpectedly brings up the transparent outfit Kenichi once showed her and asks if she can have it. Kenichi, taken aback, jokingly assumes there's someone she wants to impress. Primula confirms his guess and adds with a smile that the person she's talking about is present right now. Kenichi, flustered, humbly thinks she's referring to him but quickly advises her not to fall for someone older, telling her to hold herself in higher regard. Still, Primula is firm, stating even her father is fine with her being around Kenichi. Though confused and mentally drained, Kenichi decides it's not worth arguing over and suggests they revisit the topic another time. Primula then asks if they can sleep in the same bed that night. Reluctantly, Kenichi agrees but is left puzzled about why someone like her would be interested in a guy like him. The following morning, Primula departs for town. Not long after, a man in armor shows up at Kenichi's place. It's the same one who once bought a sword from him. The man introduces himself as Paul and says he's following up on strange rumors about someone living deep in the forest. Paul then begins questioning Kenichi about his odd equipment and tools. Kenichi shrugs it off, blaming everything on magic. Paul, intrigued, asks if Kenichi is a mage. To avoid further probing, Kenichi hands him a stack of steel, explaining he's currently out of swords but that Paul can get one forged at a blacksmith. Paul, appreciative of the gift, decides to share a rumor in return. He speaks of a mysterious mage within the Empire known for an unusual spell. Apparently, this spell produces a generous amount of a yellow, tangy substance that the mage refers to as mayo something. Kenichi's eyes widen as Paul reveals the name mayonnaise. What's more, Paul says the same mage allegedly defeated a powerful dragon. Kenichi is left speechless, struggling to comprehend how someone could take down a dragon with mayonnaise, and more importantly, curious about what kind of reincarnated person could have pulled that off. The scene shifts, showing that a month has passed since Primula left. Kenichi figures the Mallow Trading Company caravan should be returning soon, so he plans to go meet her. But just as he heads out, he hears a commotion and decides to investigate. From the gossip around him, he learns that the caravan was attacked and that Primula has been taken. He spots Mallow, Primula's father, pleading with adventurers for aid, but no one is willing to get involved. The name of the culprit, Shagar, seems enough to scare even the guild and the knights, who claim they need several days to prepare. Mallow, desperate and in tears, turns to Kenichi and begs for help. The townsfolk avoid eye contact, clearly too scared to face a gang of 50 armed men. Meanwhile, Primula is locked in a cell, demanding answers. Shagar mocks her, saying someone with a figure like hers was bound to catch the eye of a depraved noble. Back in town, Mallow pleads once more, and Kenichi, after a moment's hesitation, promises to rescue her. Though he knows he lacks the combat skills needed for such a mission, he feels this is one of those times a man can't turn away. He tells Mallow he'll need funds for supplies, and without question, Mallow hands him the money. A few nearby cat folk overhear this and rush off to find someone named Miley. Mallow then informs Kenichi that the bandits are holed up in the ruins of an old castle roughly 40 leagues, or 50 kilometers, west of town. Realizing the distance, Kenichi knows he needs transport, so he prepares to summon a vehicle. After asking everyone to clear the area, he uses summoning magic and conjures up a truck. He climbs atop it and explains to the astonished crowd that it's a steel carriage that moves by his command. He then calls for volunteers, offering weapons and reminding them of the reward for capturing Shagar. Despite his rallying cry, no one steps forward. Fear outweighs greed. Just as Kenichi is about to leave alone, a bobcat jumps onto the truck, signaling its intent to join him. Grateful, Kenichi welcomes the unexpected companion. At that moment, the cat folk return with Miley and others, all geared up to assist in the rescue. Kenichi thanks them sincerely and begins arming them, giving axes and large blades to most, and handing a bow to Miley. Just then, Paul arrives and volunteers to accompany them. Kenichi welcomes him but raises an eyebrow at the sight of his full battle attire. Paul explains that he retrieved his sword and donned his armor to be fully prepared for the coming fight. Drawing the blade, Kenichi immediately recognizes it as crafted from the special steel he had once given Paul. Paul adds that defeating Shareva and his crew would make an excellent inaugural mission for his wolf fang. At that moment, the elderly mage steps forward and expresses interest in joining. Kenichi, skeptical, points out that it might be too dangerous for someone his age. In response, the old mage simply smirks and launches a fireball into the air, proclaiming that he was once a seasoned adventurer himself. He assures Kenichi of his usefulness in combat. The mage also reveals his curiosity about the rare magic that Kenichi uses. Seeing the fireball and hearing his words, Kenichi allows him to come along. Not long after, Anima approaches and requests to join them too. Kenichi warns her that their mission involves danger and battle, not bartering or trade. But Anima insists she may not fight, but she can cook for the group. Impressed by her resolve, Kenichi agrees to let her accompany them. Turning to the remaining adventurers and townsfolk, Kenichi gives one final call for anyone else willing to join. However, none step forward, most quickly retreat, unwilling to get involved. Just as they're about to leave, Mallow pleads to go too, but Kenichi firmly denies him, urging him to focus on healing his injury. He promises Mallow that Primula will be brought back safely. Mallow, though anxious, accepts this with visible relief. Following that, Kenichi pays a silver coin at the Adventurers Guild and formally posts a quest to defeat Shagar. The group then departs from town. As they pass through the streets, whispers ripple among the townsfolk. Many assume Kenichi and his team will simply vanish with Mallow's money, believing a small, inexperienced group has no chance against Shagar's gang. Despite the skepticism around him, Kenichi remains unfazed, eyes fixed on the task ahead. Elsewhere, at the bandits' hideout, Anemon gives Primula a small piece of bread. Primula quickly notices Anemon's hunger and urges her to eat it instead. While eating, Anemon is asked if she's also a prisoner. She nods silently. With a comforting smile, Primula assures her that they'll escape together. When Anemon questions how that could be possible, Primula simply replies that someone will come to help. Anemon asks if she means the gods, and Primula, seeing the faint spark of hope, just nods. Back with Kenichi's group, night falls as they set up camp. Kenichi prepares a modest vegetable soup. Meanwhile, the cat folk notice a bobcat nearby eating some cat food. Intrigued, they ask to try some, and Kenichi obliges. Much to their surprise, they find it tasty. Amused by their reaction, the elderly mage gives into curiosity and takes a bite, discovering that he enjoys it too. Once dinner is done, Kenichi gathers everyone and lays out the plan to attack the bandit base. The group listens attentively, offering no objections. Aware she might hold them back, Anemon volunteers to stay behind. Later, Miley advances to scout the enemy encampment using a transceiver Kenichi gave her. When she hears Kenichi's voice through it, she's stunned. He explains it's a magical device that allows long-range communication. The old mage, watching closely, remarks that even the Empire likely lacks such technology. Kenichi calmly tells him to pretend he never saw it. With the scout in position, Kenichi readies the others to move. Before departing, he speaks with Anima, telling her that if he hasn't returned by the next day, she must report their failure to the guild. She nods, understanding the seriousness of his words. As they near the enemy camp beneath the cover of darkness, Miley relays her findings, guards at the watchtower, and the rest of the gang inside drinking heavily. Kenichi sees the moment as ideal for a strike. Just before battle, one of the catfolk hands him a small nut. Thinking little of it, Kenichi eats it, only to realize it's laced with some strange substance. A wave of bliss floods over him, making him feel bizarrely cheerful just moments before the confrontation. Fueled by adrenaline and a mysterious compound now surging through his body, Kenichi jumps into his truck and signals Miley to handle the watchtower guards. The stationed lookouts spot the approaching vehicle, mistaking it for some bizarre beast, but before they can sound the alarm, Miley silences them with pinpoint shots. She hops back into the truck just as the old mage steps up and casts a powerful explosion spell, obliterating the castle gate in a flash of fire and force. The shockwave shakes the enemy camp, throwing the bandits into a frenzy of confusion. Impressed, Kenichi shouts for another blast, but the mage, drained of energy, apologetically shakes his head. With no time to waste, the team charges forward. The catfolk warriors tear through the disoriented bandits with deadly precision, while the knight eagerly tests his new blade. When a bandit lunges at Kenichi, the bobcat companion intercepts him, and Miley finishes the threat with a well-aimed shot. The chaos draws more bandits into the fray, but Kenichi is ready. With a devilish grin, he summons his backhoe and barrels into the enemy ranks like a man possessed. The hulking machine plows through the disorganized thugs, scattering them in panic. As his squad keeps the upper hand, it becomes clear these criminals are no match for them, mere bottom-tier raiders, unprepared for real resistance. While smashing through the camp with his machine, Kenichi corners a few fleeing enemies and demands Primula's location. As he maneuvers the vehicle into a quieter area, it inadvertently reveals a hidden underground cell, where Anemone and several captives are found. Upon seeing Kenichi and the intimidating machine, Anemone stares in stunned awe, unsure whether to believe he's human or something divine. But Primula is nowhere among them. Then, a harsh, echoing voice rings out across the camp. Shagar steps into view, holding Primula hostage. Primula's face lights up at the sight of Kenichi, reassured by his presence. Shagar sizes up the group, surprised that someone who controls monsters came for this one girl. Kenichi demands Primula's release, but Shagar isn't ready to give up so easily. With a smug grin, he presses his blade to Primula's chest and demands they drop their weapons or she dies. When they don't comply, Shagar angrily tears some of her clothes, sneering that he would have had his fun if he'd known it would end this way. Quietly, Kenichi activates a laser sight and signals Miley to fire when the light blinds Shagar. She nods in understanding. When Kenichi shines the laser into Shagar's eyes, he flinches, and Miley seizes the moment, one clean shot. Primula bolts toward Kenichi, but Shagar makes one last attempt to recapture her. Before he can reach her, an invisible force slams him to the ground, right in front of Miley. She looks down at him coldly and delivers the final shot without hesitation. With Shagar dead, Primula throws herself into Kenichi's embrace. But the strange drug from earlier still lingers in Kenichi's system, stirring dangerous impulses within him. He clenches his fists, fighting to keep control. One of the catfolk warriors departs to inform Anima of the situation. Inside the stronghold, the rescued girls clean up and unwind while Kenichi stores away his machine. He hands out fresh clothes and asks Primula to assist Anemone with bathing, also giving her a pair of scissors and asking her to trim the girl's hair. Primula, always the entrepreneur, eyes the scissors and asks if she can market them through her business. In her enthusiasm, she accidentally lets her towel drop, causing a stir among the other girls. Flustered, she quickly recovers, while Kenichi simply shakes his head, thinking she's a true merchant at heart. After the bath, the girls emerge refreshed, and Anemone looks like a new person. Kenichi introduces himself and asks her name. As the group talks, the truth unfolds: Anemone was involved in the kidnappings. She hands a letter to Paul, and as he reads it, his face hardens. The letter reveals the guild and knights had been deliberately delayed by nobles meddling behind the scenes. Kenichi praises Anemone's courage for exposing this. Later, Anima arrives at the castle, relieved everyone is alive and safe. She notices Anemone's small frame and murmurs that the girl is about the same age her own child would have been. Kenichi is surprised and listens quietly as Anima explains that her child died during the plague. That night, with the camp finally secure and the danger past, Kenichi lies down, utterly spent. Kenichi couldn't help but recall the earlier talk about what to do with the bandit corpses, gruesome business, but fatigue smothered any deeper thought. He surrendered to sleep, ready to set out for Dahlia with the rising sun. The story transitions to Kenichi and his companions rolling back into town. Mallow and the others are already waiting with anxious eyes. Their vehicle pulls up, and Mallow lights up when he spots his daughter running toward him. She leaps into his arms, and the two share a heartfelt embrace, clearly grateful to be reunited. Mallow notices her expensive-looking blouse and she quickly explains it was a gift from Kenichi. They share a brief laugh, knowing the garment would fetch a good price. Kenichi is no longer surprised. Somehow, business always creeps into their conversations, no matter the situation. Mallow thanks Kenichi for saving his daughter, then asks whether the spoils are tucked safely into his item box. Kenichi confirms, prompting a brief flashback. The catfolk had previously requested he store the severed heads of the bandits inside his item box. Though a morbid request, they insisted it was necessary, not only to prove the bandits were dealt with, but also to help confirm their identities given the bounty involved. Kenichi found it odd, especially for a first-timer, but they assured him he'd get used to it. Miley had warned him the heads start to stink after a while, which made the item box the best storage method. Shrugging off the strangeness of this world, Kenichi did as asked and stored them away. Alongside them, he also collected all the valuables from the hideout, roughly 100 gold coins, and an assortment of rugs, pottery, gemstones, blades, and other treasure. Before they left the hideout, Kenichi offered the rescued girls a ride home. Some declined, revealing that their families and homes had been wiped out. Seeing an opportunity to help, he invited them to travel to Dahlia instead. He told them to decide, those who wanted to return home could do so, and anyone willing could join them. Dahlia was a large city with ample work, and Primula even pledged support from the Mallow Trading Company. Kenichi then turned to Anemone, asking where she was from. She replied that her home was Yerup village. Primula noted that Yerup was about 800 kilometers away. Kenichi offered to take her there, but she gently declined. Anima speculated that Anemone had likely been sold off by her family to reduce the number of mouths to feed. Kenichi pressed no further and instead asked if she'd prefer to join them on the trip to Dahlia. She agreed. They resumed their journey, and Kenichi dropped off any girls who chose to return home. The travel spanned several days, but eventually, they arrived at their destination. Now back in the present, the focus shifts to the Adventurers Guild. The catfolk present Shargar's severed head to the guild receptionist, who recoils in horror. Another male staff member approaches, asking how many heads were collected. The catfolk struggle to give an accurate answer, their poor memory with numbers showing. Kenichi steps in, calmly stating there are 52 heads. The number shocks the onlookers in the guild. The catfolk guess it'll take the entire day to verify them all, while Kenichi leans back, letting them handle it. Soon, the old mage walks up to Kenichi, praising his spellcasting skill and the absurd storage capacity of his item box. He cautions that if nobles catch wind of what Kenichi has done, they'll likely stir up trouble. Kenichi simply replies that as long as nobody talks, he'll stay out of the spotlight. The mage nods, he's not one to gossip. Kenichi adds that if things go south, he'll just leave the city. Then Paul approaches, announcing he's going to report the incident to Count Asclepius. Kenichi correctly assumes this means noble involvement will be brought up. Paul confirms it and heads off. Later, Kenichi shares that the guild took until sundown to finish counting and confirming the heads. The bounty came out to a whopping 861 gold coins. Interestingly, Anima declined her share, admitting she hadn't done any of the fighting. Instead, she asked Kenichi if she could look after Anemone, vowing to raise her as if she were her own daughter. Kenichi didn't object to the arrangement and eventually exited the guild. As he walked through the bustling town, he noticed people cheering and celebrating the downfall of Sharba and his crew. As he moved along, he caught sight of Anemone discreetly trailing behind him. Meanwhile, back inside the guild hall, Anima returned with drinks for herself and Anemone, only to find the latter missing. Elsewhere, Kenichi explained to Anemone that he'd be staying in town for the night since the gates had already closed. He made his way to Azalea's inn, where a bard was performing an upbeat ballad recounting the group's recent triumph over Shargar. Azalea welcomed him with a mix of warmth and playful sorrow. She jokingly asked if it was true he took down an entire gang of outlaws. Kenichi brushed it off, insisting the tale was greatly exaggerated, silently thinking that if she knew the truth, she'd be the first to claim a reward on his head. Their conversation shifted when Azalea brought up a forgotten promise that he once said he'd make her his lover if he ever struck it rich. Caught off guard, Kenichi wondered how she'd learned about his recent success. He denied ever making such a vow and asked if there was a vacant room available. Feigning sadness, she pretended to cry, questioning if she had only ever been a brief distraction to him. Unwilling to continue the drama, Kenichi retired to his room, inwardly noting that it wouldn't be long before the nobles caught wind of what he had done. That night, as he lay exhausted, Azalea quietly crept into his bed. Despite his half-conscious protests about being tired, she began undressing with clear intentions. Their moment, however, was abruptly cut short when Anemone walked in on them, forcing everything to a halt. The next morning, Kenichi revealed that Anemone had decided to stay by his side. He took her to Anima's shop, planning to hand her over, but found it empty. Unfazed, Kenichi went about his day. He first visited a weapon dealer and sold the arms he'd looted from the gang for 32 gold coins. Then he traded a stash of decorative vases and assorted treasures to Mallow Trading Company, earning 35 more. Lastly, he sold some old furniture to a maid's shop and pocketed another 22 coins. Altogether, the loot totaled 89 gold coins. The sum was divided among 7 people, each receiving 12 coins. Kenichi used some of his earnings to buy dresses for Anima and the women who'd stayed behind, then returned home. There, Anima was waiting and was relieved to see Anemone safe. Inside, Anima learned that Anemone wanted to remain with Kenichi. She offered to teach the girl how to run a business if she came back, but Anemone refused. Kenichi asked again if she was certain, and when she confirmed, Anima agreed to let her stay, with the promise that she could return anytime things became too difficult. Later, Kenichi accompanied Anima to a carriage headed back to town. On his way home, he asked Anemone why she chose to stay. She admitted it was because he had fed her until she was truly full, and they later shared a hearty meal together. That evening, at her urging, the two bathed together, and they ended up spending the night in each other's arms. But deep into the night, shadowy figures began lurking around Kenichi's house, and he awoke from a nightmare, drenched in sweat. Roughly 2 weeks later, word spread that Paul had been promoted to Baron for his part in defeating Shagar. He was granted a small piece of land, tasked with attracting settlers, and even began looking for a suitable wife. Whispers circulated that a noble had been stripped of title, something Kenichi found completely believable, considering the bandits' involvement in the Primula kidnapping. One day in town, Kenichi and Anemone spotted an unusual contraption roll past, a primitive bicycle, which Anemone called a drazzine. Kenichi recalled how Mallow and Primula had mocked his idea at first. But after the Shagar debacle, they acknowledged its potential. Soon after, they summoned him, paid him 5 gold coins for the invention, and bought the rights, offering apologies for their earlier ridicule. Not long afterward, Kenichi felt someone observing him. Although he couldn't find anyone suspicious, the feeling lingered. Eventually, the guild finalized all reports and dispersed the remaining rewards. Kenichi used his portion to repay Mallow for the earlier supplies he'd borrowed. The rest he shared with the women he had helped rescue. With only 1 gold coin left, he gave it to Inama, who then offered a fruit to Anemone. Just as they shared a brief moment of peace, Kenichi once again felt eyes on him. This time, he finally spotted the one following him. Gripping Anemone's wrist, Kenichi darted through the tight back streets, aware of a pack of pursuers hot on their heels. He weaved through alleys, toppling crates and barrels to slow them down. Just when it seemed he might get away, a carriage swung into his path, cutting off his escape. The group cornered him and demanded he board quietly, saying their employer wanted a word. Playing along, Kenichi calmly bought a bundle of firecrackers from a nearby stall and hurled them into the carriage and among the pursuers. The sudden explosions caused chaos, giving Kenichi the perfect distraction. He slipped beneath the carriage and emerged on the far side, unseen. Though they regrouped and resumed the chase, he managed to snatch a crossbow and used it to keep them at bay with a few convincing threats. Moments later, Mallow pulled up and asked about the noise. Kenichi and Anemone climbed into his cart and explained the situation. Mallow theorized that the anti-monarchy faction was likely behind the attack and suggested Kenichi seek an audience with the local lord, a man known for his fairness. Although Kenichi valued Mallow's advice, he suspected the lord would demand something steep in return, perhaps taxes or obligations he couldn't refuse. Shortly after, he disembarked on the outskirts of the town. Back at Mallow's estate, he shared with his daughter the story of how he first encountered Kenichi. She recalled how they owed their family's newfound surname and status to Kenichi's invention. The lord had been so impressed by their mechanical creation, the drazzine, that he granted them a family name inspired by it. Thus, she became Primula ni Drazzine. Mallow, with a serious tone, told her that their entire enterprise owed Kenichi a debt far greater than they could repay. The next morning, Primula prepared to head out. She thought back to her early impressions of Kenichi, just an old man with a small stall, but as time passed, she realized he was wise and kind, and the quality of his inventions had brought them success and prestige. Grateful and fond of him, she tried hard to win his affection, even when it seemed he didn't notice. But when he risked himself to save her, she knew he cared deeply. That moment convinced her to follow her heart. Yet, when she went to his home, she found it. And the nearby fields, completely gone. Elsewhere, Kenichi was already riding out of town on a rugged bike. On his journey, he ran into Fuyu, and they took a moment to chat. Fuyu was surprised to hear Kenichi had become a traveling merchant and asked about the famous raisin people kept mentioning. Kenichi nodded. It was his custom design. Fuyu asked where he was off to next. Kenichi replied that he'd packed up everything and left his old life behind. Though he often wondered if there was a deeper reason for ending up here, he was content knowing he'd been able to protect Primula. As he continued, a bobcat appeared from the brush. He smiled at the animal, wished it well, and moved on, only to find it trailing him, seemingly choosing to follow. Back in the present, he explained to Fuyu that he was on a journey with no set destination. When asked about his companions, Kenichi simply said, "They're my family." He rode off, and Fuyu silently wished him safety. Later, Kenichi sat by a river, fishing. After cooking his catch, he told Anemone and the bobcat that they were seeking a place to build a new home. They were now about 100 kilometers from Dahlia, and the next village, Estrantia, was only a few kilometers away. Serving up fish soup to Anemone and the bobcat, Kenichi reflected that this calm, simple life suited him well. He also recalled Anemone mentioning she was 12, though her size made him question it. Not long after, he demonstrated a drone to Anemone, which left her awestruck. She asked if it was magic, and he playfully confirmed it was. He also remarked on the need to find a permanent home. Realizing the river flowed into a nearby lake, he headed there with his companions in search of a good base. Once they arrived, Kenichi pretended to cast a magical spell to summon a house, and to Anemone's amazement, one appeared. With their new home established, Kenichi turned his thoughts to the bobcat's name. After some thought, he chose Vel, short for velvet. In the following scenes, he's seen teaching Anemone how to read and write, with her quick learning showing just how eager she is to grow. Kenichi proceeds to teach Anemone mathematics, but like most children, she finds it difficult to enjoy. While she's working through the problems, Kenichi starts thinking about alternative fuel options, as kerosene is becoming too expensive. He recalls a segment he once saw about biodiesel made from used cooking oil and decides to learn more. He buys a few books on the topic. Later, Kenichi is absorbed in reading the books when Anemone asks what he's doing. He explains his studying, and she expresses her desire to learn as well. However, he points out that the books are in a language she doesn't understand. Determined, she asks to learn, and Kenichi agrees to teach her Japanese. The next day, Kenichi is seen covering his solar panels with camouflage. He hears rustling from the bushes and prepares for a fight, suspecting a monster. To his surprise, it's Mayui, who jumps out with a grin, scolding him for leaving her behind. She explains she had to work hard to track him down. She then joins Anemone, and Kenichi announces that Mayui will stay with them from now on. During lunch, Kenichi asks Mayui if Dahlia has stayed the same since he left. She mentions that Paul proposed to Primula, and Kenichi comments that it makes sense, though he grumbles about missing the ceremony. After lunch, the three of them take a bath and then settle down with picture books. Mayui laughs, saying even she can understand the stories with the pictures. Kenichi wonders if such books could be a good product and asks if they have any familiar fairy tales. They list several, and Kenichi becomes curious about one called The Forest Elf. Anemone explains that the story is about an elf who falls in love with a human prince. Their love is opposed by both elves and humans, and the elf is killed. However, thanks to the fairies, she escapes and finds happiness in their realm. Inspired by the tale, Kenichi begins drawing for a picture book based on it. Kenichi uses a printing machine kit to make a copy of the book, and the girls are impressed. He binds the pages together and gives each of them a copy. They are thrilled to have their own little treasure. A boat soon arrives at their home, and Kenichi asks Mayui to take Anemone somewhere safe, suspecting there may be visitors. Mayui agrees, and Kenichi steps outside with a crossbow to greet them. The newcomers calmly instruct him to lower his weapon, revealing they are from Santanka, a village across the lake. Kenichi asks why they're here and if there are any laws against settling in the area. They assure him there are no such laws, but they were worried about bandits. Kenichi explains he's just a merchant but notes that he's well armed because he had to flee from his previous city. At that moment, a bobcat approaches and fawns over Kenichi. The beast man with the group laughs, saying there's no way Kenichi could be a bad person. The man in the boat introduces himself as Crouton, and the beast man is Namius. Kenichi also introduces himself, and Crouton reveals he once worked for the government in Estrantia. Namius looks around at Kenichi's home and remarks that it seems fine, prompting Crouton to apologize for doubting him. Noticing the picture books Kenichi made, Crouton buys one for his daughter. After a brief visit, they leave, and Kenichi enjoys lunch with the girls. Later, Kenichi is gathering herbs in the forest when Miley appears, full of energy. She playfully jumps on him and suggests they take advantage of Anemone's absence. Though Kenichi hesitates, Miley persuades him, and they end up spending time together in private. Afterward, Kenichi rushes out of his shed and jumps into the river, explaining the shed had become unbearably hot due to the work he was doing with diesel, a dangerous task involving toxic substances. Despite the danger, he succeeded. Kenichi notices Anemone looks upset, as he's been preoccupied with his work and neglected her. He suggests they create a new picture book together, but she remains silent. He then proposes they visit Estrantia, and Miley eagerly volunteers to come along. Anemone agrees to join, and they all set off toward the city, following Miley, who knows the way. As they approach, Kenichi decides to finish the journey on foot. Kenichi's first stop is the Adventurers Guild, where he tells the receptionist he wants to register at the branch. Both he and Miley present their guild IDs. The receptionist steps into a back room and returns shortly, wondering aloud if Kenichi is the one who defeated Shaba and Dahlia. Kenichi quickly tells her not to reveal his personal details, but when she doesn't understand, he insists she stay quiet. She agrees and finishes their registration, charging a silver coin for each. Afterward, the group grabs a meal. The girls are not impressed by the soup, as it lacks a proper stock after getting used to Kenichi's cooking. In response, Kenichi adds some bonito stock, and the dish finally wins them over. While eating, Kenichi notices suspicious figures lurking about and spots Croton heading down a narrow alley with his daughter. Choosing not to intervene, he continues observing the town until they come across the Snowflake tool shop. Miley explains the shop is run by an elderly mage, and Kenichi, intrigued, decides to enter. Inside, he spots something unusual and asks the mage about its use. The mage, offended by being called old, demonstrates the machine by adding water and wine. The machine processes the mixture and outputs 2 separate streams. Kenichi deduces it's a device for separating substances from a mixture and realizes its potential for producing biodiesel. When he asks about the price, the mage says it costs 5 gold coins, so Kenichi buys it. Soon after, Anemone enters with a grimoire, eager to purchase it. Kenichi's eyes brighten at the sight of the book and asks if reading it would grant someone the ability to wield magic. The mage confirms it, provided the reader has innate magical power. Kenichi examines the book and asks its price, which is 10 gold coins. He decides to buy it but is told the grimoire must be registered, so he is asked to return in a week. Later, as they make their way back, they encounter Narnias, who hastily departs. Sensing impending chaos, Kenichi feels they should head home, but a scream from a nearby alley catches his attention. Rushing to investigate, he finds Krevin and his daughter being threatened by the same thugs he noticed earlier. At first, Kenichi tries to ignore the situation, but when Anemone asks if he isn't going to help, he can't ignore them. He tells Miley to look after Anemone, buys a mask to conceal his identity, and confronts the thugs. The thugs demand to know his intentions, and Kenichi sternly warns them to leave Krevin and his daughter alone, or he'll use magic against them. When they refuse to back down, he intimidates them further by hurling firecrackers and threatening to blast them from the inside. The thugs flee in fear. Although Krevin and his daughter are initially shocked by his display, Kenichi reveals his true self and calms them down. Shortly after, Narnias returns, relieved to see they are safe. Krevin thanks Kenichi for saving them, and Kenichi asks about the attackers. Krevin reveals they were thugs from Zutera, a notorious spy syndicate, men he had arrested during his government service. They've been targeting him ever since. Krevin's daughter then asks if these are Kenichi's friends, and he explains they were the ones who sold him the picture book. The girl excitedly thanks Kenichi for the book, and Anemone adds that she helped create it. This sparks Mary's interest in making a book too, and Anemone becomes equally enthusiastic about collaborating. The two bond quickly, and Kenichi feels a sense of warmth seeing Anemone make a friend her own age. Later, Krevin's family visits Kenichi and Anemone, and they spend the day together enjoying activities. By evening, they say their goodbyes. From then on, Anemone and Mary begin visiting each other daily, collaborating on a picture book about Cinderella. However, things take a turn for the worse when Krevin arrives at Kenichi's house, clutching all his life savings and urgently asking for help. His daughter has fallen ill with a severe cold, a local disease that's so deadly most victims don't survive the night. Miley suggests that Croton visit the old lady mage for her healing magic, but Croton lacks the funds for her treatment. Instead, Kenichi provides him with a children's cold remedy and tells him to give it to Mary, leaving the remaining costs on himself. Croton leaves, and Kenichi heads out on his bike. Later, the old lady mage checks on Mary and diagnoses her with chicory fever. She informs them that her healing magic won't work on this illness, and it can only be cured with chicory flower seeds, which grow near the spring that feeds the river. Determined, Kenichi decides to gather the seeds, and Croton offers to join him. Kenichi warns that the journey will be dangerous, but Croton insists he won't slow them down. Nehanas also decides to join the expedition. The old lady mage reminds them that the seeds must be brought back by morning. With urgency, the group sets out, unaware that the thugs from earlier are secretly watching them, anticipating a more interesting turn of events. Thanks for watching. Subscribe so you don't miss the next part.